The universe is not ignoring you. You are exhausting yourself, fighting what was never meant to be forced. The more desperately people chase peace, love, success, or certainty, the more life seems to slip through their fingers. You call it control, but sometimes it is fear wearing the mask of ambition. Like a person drowning while fighting the water, most people suffer not because life is cruel, but because they never stop resisting it. You plan every step, yet your soul still feels lost. You force love, yet people drift away. You chase peace, yet your mind grows louder. And slowly, without realizing it, you become a prisoner of your own resistance. But Buddhism teaches a truth the ego hates. Sometimes your life does not change because you are trying too hard to change it. Because there is a strange moment in life when the universe stops asking you to fight and starts asking you to trust. And by the end of this video, you may realize something unsettling. Perhaps life was never blocking your path. Perhaps your fear was. Your desperation is blocking your blessings. Why do the things you want most seem to move farther away the harder you chase them? The love you beg for becomes distant. The success you obsess over feels delayed. The peace you desperately search for slips through your fingers like water. And after a while, you begin to wonder if the universe has forgotten you. But the Buddha would whisper something unexpected. It is not that life is ignoring you. It is that your desperation is creating too much noise to hear what life is trying to give. The universe cannot enter a mind filled with panic. When you cling tightly to an outcome, your thoughts become restless. Your emotions become turbulent. You check, force, overthink, and control. From the outside, it looks like determination, but inside, it feels like fear. And fear has a subtle message. I do not trust life. What you chase in fear learns to run from you. Imagine a still lake under the night sky. When the water is calm, it reflects the moon perfectly. But if someone keeps throwing stones into it, the reflection disappears. Your mind is that lake. Desperation is the stone. Peace is the reflection. Many people believe they are creating their future, but in truth, they are emotionally strangling it. They grip so tightly that they leave no room for life to breathe. Have you been doing this? Trying to force someone to stay, trying to rush your purpose, trying to control every detail because uncertainty feels unbearable. Notice how exhausting that is. Now close your eyes for a moment. Imagine your fists unclenching underwater. Feel the current moving around you. Feel the relief of no longer carrying what was never yours to force. This is not giving up. This is trust. In Buddhist wisdom, suffering begins when attachment says, "Things must happen my way." Freedom begins when the heart says, "I will do my part and let life do the rest." The moment you stop wrestling with life, life finally has space to support you. So ask yourself, what am I secretly trying to force? Has my attachment created more suffering than peace? What would happen if I stopped chasing for just one moment? Perhaps the blessing you seek is already on its way. It is simply waiting for you to become still enough to receive it. 2. Control is fear, wearing a crown. What if your need to control everything is not strength, but proof that you trust nothing? You plan every conversation. You rehearse every outcome. You try to predict what people will say, how life will unfold, and what could go wrong. From the outside, it looks responsible. But in the quiet of your own mind, it feels like tension that never sleeps. People call it planning, but deep inside, it is often fear wearing a crown. The ego believes that if it can control enough, it can finally feel safe. Yet life does not obey our demands. Relationships change, opportunities disappear, bodies age, seasons turn. The Buddha taught that everything is impermanent, and suffering begins when we demand permanence from a world designed to move. The tighter the grip, the faster life escapes. Trying to control life is like trying to hold smoke in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the less remains. And after years of grasping, you are left with nothing but tired hands and a restless heart. Have you mistaken control for strength? Perhaps your exhaustion is not coming from life itself. Perhaps it is coming from resisting life. There is a quieter form of courage. It does not need to dominate every outcome. It does not need guarantees. It simply meets the moment as it is. Close your eyes and imagine yourself standing in the middle of a storm. The wind pushes against you. The sky roars above you. For years, you fought to stop the storm, believing peace would come only when the weather changed. But this time, you do not resist. You let the wind pass through you, and for the first time, you realize that peace was never the absence of uncertainty. Peace was your willingness to stop fighting the sky. This is what surrender means, not giving up on your life, but releasing the illusion that you were ever in control of it. In Buddhist wisdom, true strength is not found in forcing life to obey you. It is found in trusting that you can remain steady even when life does not. So ask yourself, what am I terrified would happen if I truly let go? Have I mistaken control for wisdom? Is my suffering coming from what is happening or from my refusal to allow it? The moment you loosen your grip, life stops feeling like a battle and begins to feel like a river carrying you exactly where you need to go. 3. The universe goes silent before it redirects you. Why do some seasons of life feel so empty just before everything begins to change? The messages stop coming, the opportunities go quiet. The path that once seemed certain dissolves into fog. You pray for a sign, but all you hear is silence. In those moments, it is easy to believe you have been abandoned. But silence is not always rejection. Sometimes, silence is reconstruction. The universe becomes quiet when it is removing what no longer belongs in your life. The noise fades, so you can hear something deeper. Old identities begin to loosen. Familiar patterns no longer fit. What once felt meaningful starts to feel strangely distant. And this can feel frightening, because confusion often arrives when your soul is leaving behind the person you used to be. A forest becomes terrifying at night, not because the path disappears, but because your old way of seeing no longer works. You are still on the path. You simply cannot navigate it with the same eyes. The Buddha taught that transformation rarely feels comfortable. Before wisdom arises, there is often a period of not knowing. Before peace settles in, there is a season where everything inside you is being rearranged. What if this uncertain chapter is not a punishment? What if it is preparation? Close your eyes and picture yourself walking through thick fog, holding a small lantern. The light does not reveal the entire road. It only shows the next step. And yet, step by step, that is enough. Life does not need to explain everything at once. It only asks for your trust in this moment. Think of the times when loss forced you to look inward. Think of the unanswered questions that pushed you to grow. Think of the quiet nights that taught you how to sit with yourself. Silence has been shaping you. Uncertainty has been deepening you, and the path is becoming clearer, even if you cannot yet see where it leads. So, ask yourself, what if this confusing season is preparing me? Where has silence forced me to grow inwardly? Could this uncertainty be guiding me somewhere deeper than I planned? The universe often grows silent before it redirects you. And when the fog finally lifts, you will understand that what felt like emptiness was life, clearing the way for the person you were always meant to become. 4. Forcing your path creates invisible suffering. Why do some people achieve everything they once wanted and still feel strangely empty? They earn the title, they reach the milestone, they receive the praise they spent years chasing. Everyone around them calls it success. Yet when they are alone at night, a quiet sadness remains, because not every achievement belongs to your soul. Some victories are simply socially rewarded self-destruction. The world often teaches you to pursue what looks impressive, more status, more approval, more proof that your life matters. But the Buddha taught that suffering begins the moment you build your identity around what others can applaud. You may win the race and still lose yourself. When you force a path that does not truly belong to you, your body begins to speak. Your chest feels heavy. Your energy fades. Even your accomplishments start to feel hollow. The soul whispers long before the mind collapses. But many people ignore that whisper because they are afraid to disappoint others. Imagine a bird living inside a golden cage. It is fed, protected, admired. Yet slowly it forgets how to sing. This is what happens when you stay committed to a life that no longer feels alive inside you. Have you been pursuing peace or approval? Have you been pretending that a dream still matters simply because you have already sacrificed so much for it? Close your eyes and imagine removing every title from your identity, your job title, your achievements, your reputation. Now ask yourself quietly, without achievement, who am I? At first, the silence may feel uncomfortable, but beneath that silence, something honest begins to emerge. A part of you that does not want to perform anymore. A part of you that longs to feel whole rather than admired. This is where true freedom begins. In Buddhist wisdom, your worth has never depended on what you accomplish. It arises from your ability to live in harmony with what is true. So listen carefully to your own life. What dream no longer feels alive? How much suffering comes from pretending? And what would happen if you gave yourself permission to choose peace over applause? The greatest success is not becoming who the world expected. It is remembering who you were before you began forcing yourself to fit inside a golden cage. 5. Some people leave because your spirit is expanding. What if some of the people you lost were never meant to stay? What if certain heartbreaks were not punishments from life, but quiet acts of spiritual protection? There are relationships that enter your life like teachers. They awaken something inside you. They expose your wounds, your attachments, your deepest fears. For a time, you believe they are meant to walk beside you forever. But some souls are not sent to remain, they are sent to reveal. Some souls enter your life to open the door, not stay in the room. This truth is painful, because the heart wants permanence. It wants to believe that everyone who understands you will stay. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that all things change. When your awareness expands, your relationships also change. Some deepen, some drift away, some end completely. And this is not always a loss. Sometimes it is a sign that your spirit can no longer fit into the old shape of your life. When a snake sheds its skin, even its former shape can no longer hold it. You may try to return to what once felt familiar. You may reread old messages, revisit old memories, and wonder what you did wrong. But deep inside, you know the truth. You are not the same person who entered that relationship, and neither is your path. The heartbreak was real. The love was real. But so was the lesson. Perhaps this person taught you self-respect. Perhaps they showed you where you were still seeking approval. Perhaps they broke your heart so you would finally return to yourself. Close your eyes and imagine every goodbye becoming a bridge instead of a wound. See yourself walking forward lighter than before. Feel the quiet gratitude that comes when you stop asking why they left and begin asking what their presence came to teach. Who have you outgrown emotionally? What lesson did your deepest heartbreak reveal? Are you grieving a person or the version of yourself that needed them? Life begins to change when you stop clinging to what has ended. The universe removes certain people not to empty your life, but to make room for a deeper, truer version of you. And sometimes the most compassionate thing life can do is close a door your soul has already outgrown. 6. Peace begins when you stop negotiating with reality. Why does suffering become heavier the moment life refuses to match your expectations? A relationship ends when you wanted it to continue. Your plans collapse without warning. Someone you trusted changes. And the mind immediately begins its quiet protest. This should not be happening. That sentence is where much of human suffering begins. Pain is a natural part of life. Loss hurts. Rejection hurts. Uncertainty hurts. The Buddha never denied this, but he revealed something more subtle. Psychological suffering grows when the mind argues with what has already happened. Reality is one thing, your resistance to reality is another. And often it is the resistance that exhausts you. Reality stops hurting when you stop fighting what already exists. This does not mean you approve of everything that happens. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop wasting your life, demanding that the present moment be different from what it is. Arguing with reality is like screaming at winter for being cold. Winter does not become warmer. You only become more tired. How much energy have you spent replaying what should have happened? How many nights have been lost wishing someone had behaved differently? How often have you delayed your peace while waiting for life to apologize? The truth is simple and difficult. What is here is here. And peace begins the moment you stop negotiating with facts. Sit quietly for a moment. Listen to the sounds around you. The distant voices, the movement of air, the beating of your own heart. Notice what happens when you stop labeling each sound as good or bad. Everything is simply allowed to exist. This is acceptance, not weakness, not surrender to despair, but the profound strength to meet reality without inner war. What reality are you refusing to accept? How much of your suffering comes from resisting the truth? What changes when acceptance replaces resistance? In Buddhist wisdom, freedom is not found in controlling life. It is found in seeing clearly and responding with an open heart. The storm may still pass through your life. But when you stop arguing with the sky, something unexpected happens. Your mind grows quiet. Your heart becomes lighter. And the energy once spent resisting reality becomes available to heal, to grow, and to walk forward in peace. The moment you stop demanding that life be different, life begins to feel less like an enemy and more like a teacher. 7. Your anxiety is often unlived presence. Why does the mind become loudest when life becomes uncertain? The moment you do not know what will happen next, your thoughts begin racing ahead. You imagine conversations that have not occurred. You fear outcomes that may never arrive. Your body sits in one place, but your mind wanders into dozens of possible tomorrows. And in that invisible journey, you lose contact with the only moment that is real. Your anxiety is often unlived presence. The Buddha taught that fear survives by pulling the mind away from what is happening now. It feeds on imagined futures, unfinished stories, and questions that have no answers yet. The more you live in tomorrow, the less available you are to this breath, this room, this life. Fear survives by dragging the mind into tomorrow. An anxious mind is like a candle trying to light rooms it has never entered. It burns itself out, illuminating places that do not yet exist. Have you noticed how exhausting that is? You worry about what someone might say. You rehearse what could go wrong. You carry emotional burdens that belong to a future version of you. And while you are busy protecting yourself from what may happen, you miss what is quietly happening now, this moment, this breath, this chance to be fully here. Close your eyes for a moment. Take 10 slow breaths. Feel the air enter your body. Feel the air leave. With each breath, notice how existence becomes simpler when time disappears. There is no next week in this inhale. There is no worst-case scenario in this exhale. There is only life unfolding exactly where you are. How often are you mentally absent from your own life? What future fear keeps stealing today from you? Can peace exist anywhere except the present moment? In Buddhist wisdom, presence is not a technique. It is a return to what is real after the mind has wandered through its imagined storms. The future will come in its own time, and when it arrives, you will meet it with the strength you have in that moment. But today is asking for your attention now. The universe cannot be experienced in tomorrow. It can only be received in the stillness of this breath. And the moment you fully arrive here, anxiety begins to lose the only power it ever had. 8. Divine timing feels like punishment to the impatient mind. Why do delays feel so painful? Why does waiting stir so much frustration, self-doubt, and fear? Because the impatient mind believes that if something has not arrived yet, something must be wrong. The ego worships immediacy. It wants answers now, results now, healing now. It sees every delay as rejection. Every closed door feels personal. Every unanswered prayer feels like abandonment. But spiritual timing does not move according to your urgency. It moves according to your readiness. Some blessings arrive late because your spirit is still becoming capable of carrying them. A seed forced open too early never becomes a tree. Imagine planting a seed and digging it up every morning to check if it has grown. Your impatience would destroy the very thing you are trying to nurture. In the same way, many people sabotage their own unfolding by demanding fruit before their roots are strong enough. The moon never apologizes for arriving slowly. It does not rush to prove itself. It trusts its own timing. And perhaps your life is asking you to do the same. You may be waiting for love, for clarity, for a new beginning. You may feel as though life is moving for everyone except you. But what if this delay is not a punishment? What if it is protection? What if the universe is quietly preparing your heart for something your current self could not yet sustain? Close your eyes and imagine your life unfolding like sunrise. Not all at once, not in a dramatic explosion, but gradually, softly, surely. The sky does not become bright in a single moment, yet every minute brings more light. This is how real transformation happens. While you wait, your patience deepens, your attachments loosen, your understanding matures. You become less desperate and more grounded, less reactive and more trusting. Who are you becoming while you wait? What are you trying to rush emotionally? Could this delay be protecting you from receiving too much before you are ready? In Buddhist wisdom, timing is part of the teaching. Waiting reveals where you are still attached to control. It invites you to trust what you cannot yet see. The universe is rarely late. It simply refuses to deliver blessings to a version of you that is not prepared to hold tea. And one day, when what you prayed for finally arrives, you will realize the waiting was not empty. It was shaping you into someone strong enough to receive it with peace. 9. The universe responds differently to inner stillness. Why do answers so often appear only after you stop obsessing? Why does clarity arrive the moment you finally surrender your need to figure everything out? Because stillness sharpens perception. The universe may have been guiding you all along, but your inner noise was too loud to hear it. The mind is constantly speaking. It compares, predicts, worries, and replays. It searches for certainty in a world that cannot be controlled. And in that endless movement, the deeper wisdom within you becomes almost impossible to hear. Clarity arrives where mental chaos ends. Think of a glass globe filled with swirling snow. When it is shaken, everything becomes cloudy. Nothing is clear. But when the movement stops, the snow begins to settle. Slowly, the scene inside becomes visible again. Your mind works the same way. Stillness is not emptiness. It is a doorway without movement. Many people fear silence because they are afraid of what they will feel when there is nothing left to distract them. The loneliness, the grief, the truth they have postponed. But silence is not your enemy. It is where your heart finally speaks. When was the last time you sat without reaching for your phone, without planning your next move, without trying to solve your life. In those quiet moments, something subtle begins to emerge, a feeling, an insight, a gentle knowing that cannot be forced. The Buddha taught that wisdom does not arise from mental struggle. It arises from direct seeing, and seeing becomes possible only when the water of the mind becomes still. Close your eyes. Imagine your thoughts settling like snow inside a glass globe. Watch the inner storm grow quiet. Notice how clarity comes naturally when movement stops. What wisdom is your noise stopping you from hearing? What truth has been quietly waiting beneath your constant thoughts? What if stillness is the answer you have been looking for? The universe does not always shout. More often, it whispers. It speaks through intuition, through peace, through the quiet feeling that something is deeply right, even when you cannot explain why. And the moment you become still enough to listen, life starts revealing what was hidden in plain sight. The answers were never missing. They were waiting for your mind to become quiet enough to receive them. 10. Surrender is not weakness. It is alignment. Why do so many people think surrender is a form of weakness? Why does the ego shake at the thought of letting go? Because the ego has been taught that power means control. It believes that if you are not forcing, pushing, and fighting, then you must be losing. But Buddhist wisdom reveals a deeper truth. Surrender is not giving up. It is alignment. It is the quiet understanding that your soul already knows what your fearful mind keeps resisting. True power does not force life into submission. It listens. It adjusts. It flows. A river does not reach the ocean by fighting every rock in its path. It does not tire itself trying to move the mountain. It bends, it yields, it keeps flowing, and because it flows, it arrives. This is the strength of surrender. Many people spend years swimming against the current. They force relationships that no longer support them. They chase goals that no longer feel true. They hold on to identities that their heart has already outgrown. From the outside, they seem determined. Inside, they are drowning. Where are you tiring yourself unnecessarily? What part of your life feels like a constant struggle? What if the pain you feel is not a sign to push harder, but a signal to realign? Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself floating in a wide, gentle river. For so long, you kicked and fought, afraid that if you stopped, life would carry you somewhere unsafe. But now, you let go of your resistance. Your body relaxes, the water supports you, and suddenly you feel how much energy returns when you stop fighting the current. This is not passivity. You are still moving. You are still taking part. But you are no longer wasting your life fighting what is meant to guide you. In Buddhist teachings, wisdom begins when you stop confusing struggle with progress. Sometimes, the bravest act is not to push harder, but to trust more deeply. Could surrender actually be strength? What would alignment feel like instead of force? What if life is not asking you to conquer it, but to move with it? The moment you stop fighting the current, you discover something powerful. The same river you feared was trying to carry you home. And when you finally let the universe take over, your life begins to move with a peace no force could ever create. 11. Your old identity must collapse before your new life appears. Why do you feel so lost just before your life starts to change? Why does transformation often feel less like becoming and more like falling apart? Because rebirth rarely feels beautiful at first. It feels like confusion. It feels like emptiness. It feels like watching the version of yourself you worked so hard to build begin to fall apart. And the ego calls this failure, but the universe calls it preparation. The person you were cannot enter the life meant for you. There are seasons when your old identity stops working. What once defined you no longer feels true. The goals that once drove you lose their meaning. The habits that once felt comforting begin to feel heavy. You may not know who you are becoming, but you can feel that you are no longer who you were. This in-between space can feel frightening. The caterpillar likely believes dissolving inside the cocoon is the end. It does not know that what feels like destruction is the beginning of wings. In Buddhist wisdom, this is the sacred process of letting go. The self you hold onto is not permanent. It is a collection of roles, beliefs, and stories. When life starts removing what is false, the mind resists because it mistakes change for death. But what is dying was never your deepest truth. Which version of yourself is already fading? The one who needed approval, the one who kept pretending, the one who believed worth had to be earned. Close your eyes and imagine every painful ending turning to ashes beneath your feet. The failed plans, the broken relationships, the identity that no longer fits. Now see yourself walking forward lighter with every step. Not because nothing was lost, but because you are no longer carrying what you have outgrown. What identity are you afraid to let go of? What if this breakdown is sacred? What if life is not destroying you, but clearing away everything that cannot grow with you? The Buddha taught that liberation begins when attachment to the old self dissolves. And in that surrender, something quiet and powerful appears. A life that is no longer built on fear, a mind that is no longer trapped by old stories, a heart that trusts what it is becoming. Sometimes your old identity must collapse before your new life appears, and what feels like the end may be the most compassionate beginning the universe has ever given you. Bonus: the universe cannot fill a life that is already full of noise. What if the real reason you feel disconnected is not because life has stopped speaking to you, but because your inner world has become too crowded to hear it? From the moment you wake up, the noise begins. Opinions from strangers, endless notifications, comparisons, urgency. The constant pressure to know more, do more, and prove more. Your mind becomes so full that even when you are alone, you are still surrounded. And in all that noise, the quiet voice of wisdom is easily missed. The universe whispers. It does not compete. Your soul speaks softly because truth never needs to shout. Buddhist teachings remind us that clarity does not come through accumulation, it comes through emptying. Not by adding more thoughts, but by creating space between them. Not by consuming more answers, but by becoming still enough to hear the one already within you. A crowded room cannot hear a single falling leaf. In the same way, a crowded mind cannot hear the subtle guidance that has been patiently waiting beneath your fear. How much of your day is spent reacting? How often do you reach for distraction the moment silence appears? What noise has replaced your inner voice? Close your eyes for 1 minute. Imagine your mind as an empty temple at dusk. The air is still, the walls are quiet, nothing is asking for your attention. And in that sacred silence, notice how your breath becomes softer, your thoughts begin to settle, your heart feels less heavy. This is where healing begins, not in force, not in endless searching, but in the willingness to become inwardly spacious. What would happen if you stopped feeding every fear? What if emotional stillness became your daily practice? Are you listening to the universe, or only to the loudest voice in your mind? The truth you seek may not be hidden, it may simply be waiting for silence. When you release the noise, you create space for insight. When you stop chasing, you begin receiving. And when your mind becomes quiet, life no longer feels confusing. It feels guided. The universe has never stopped speaking to you. It has been waiting for the moment your inner world becomes peaceful enough to listen. Quick summary. Your desperation is blocking your blessings. The more desperately you chase something, the more fear controls your energy. Attachment clouds judgment and weakens inner peace. Life flows more naturally when the mind becomes calm and detached. Many blessings arrive only after emotional surrender replaces desperation. Control is fear wearing a crown. Most people try to control life because they fear uncertainty. But control creates tension, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion. Peace begins when you stop fighting every outcome. True strength comes from trusting life instead of controlling it. The universe goes silent before it redirects you. Confusing seasons are often periods of spiritual preparation. Silence does not always mean abandonment or failure. Sometimes life becomes unclear because your old identity is dissolving. The universe often rebuilds your path in silence before revealing it. Forcing your path creates invisible suffering. Not every goal you chase belongs to your soul. Many people achieve success but still feel empty inside. Forcing a path disconnected from your spirit creates hidden pain. Real fulfillment begins when your outer life matches your inner truth. Some people leave because your spirit is expanding. Certain relationships end because your consciousness is evolving. Not everyone is meant to walk into your next chapter. Painful endings often carry spiritual lessons and redirection. Sometimes losing people is necessary for inner transformation. Peace begins when you stop arguing with reality. Suffering grows when we resist what already exists. The mind becomes exhausted trying to control reality. Acceptance does not mean weakness. It means wisdom. Inner peace begins when resistance ends. Your anxiety is often unlived presence. Anxiety pulls the mind into imaginary futures. Most fear is created by thoughts, not present reality. Peace can only be felt in the current moment. The more present you become, the quieter the mind grows. Divine timing feels like punishment to the impatient mind. Delays are not always rejection. Sometimes life slows down to prepare you emotionally and spiritually. Impatience blinds people from the lessons hidden in waiting. Everything arrives when your soul is ready to carry it. The universe responds differently to inner stillness. Clarity rarely appears inside mental chaos. Stillness sharpens awareness and emotional intelligence. The answers people seek often appear in silence. A calm mind can hear truths that noise cannot reveal. Surrender is not weakness, it is alignment. Surrender is not giving up on life. It means releasing unnecessary struggle and resistance. Flow replaces exhaustion when you stop forcing outcomes. Real power comes from alignment, not control. Your old identity must collapse before your new life appears. Transformation often feels painful before it feels meaningful. The universe removes old versions of you before growth begins. Feeling lost can actually be part of spiritual rebirth. Your new life cannot appear while you cling to your old identity. The universe cannot fill a life that is already full of noise. Constant distraction disconnects people from their inner wisdom. The soul speaks quietly, not through chaos and overstimulation. Silence creates space for healing, clarity, and intuition. The universe becomes easier to hear when the mind becomes still. There comes a moment in life when the soul becomes tired of forcing everything, tired of chasing people who do not stay, fighting battles that never end, and carrying fears that were never meant to be carried. And in that moment, something sacred begins to happen. You stop trying to control the river of life, and for the first time, you allow yourself to flow with it. Buddhism teaches that peace is not found by conquering the world, but by no longer being controlled by your own mind. The universe does not ask you to become perfect. It asks you to become aware, still, and open enough to trust that every ending, delay, silence, and loss is shaping you into someone wiser. The quieter the mind becomes, the clearer life reveals its purpose. Zen philosophy reminds us that a flower does not force itself to bloom. It blooms when the season is right. In the same way, your healing, your purpose, your peace, and your transformation will arrive not through desperation, but through trust. So tonight, release the need to control every outcome. Let go of the fear that everything must happen now. Become present enough to understand that even this difficult season may be guiding you somewhere beautiful. And if this message touched your heart, take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comment box for more inspiring Buddhist insights on living a peaceful, meaningful, and awakened life.